Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Olarinde. We begin in Senegal, where the Constitutional Court has annulled President Macky Sall's decree of postponing the elections. The court ruled that the postponement is unlawful, also annulling a contentious bill that was passed by Parliament, moving the vote to December. Mr. Sall had announced that he was postponing the election because of what he claimed were concerns over the eligibility of opposition candidates. Well, widespread protest against that delay consumed the West African country, once considered a bastion of democracy in the region. Mr. Sall had reiterated that he was not up for another term. However, his critics accused him of either attempting to cling to power or unduly influencing his successor. In response to the Constitutional Court's decision, the regional bloc ECOWAS says it is urging all stakeholders in the electoral process to comply with this decision and for the authorities to set a date for the presidential election in accordance with the decision. 13 years after the 2011 revolution in Libya, the special representative of the Secretary General Abdoulaye Bathily says Libyans are still waiting to realize their aspirations for sustainable peace and democracy. He was speaking to the UN Security Council, adding that institutional stakeholders appear unwilling to resolve the political issues that are supposed to clear the roads to election in Libya. Mr. Bathily also touched on the expulsions of migrants and refugees across the borders between Libya and neighboring countries, calling on all authorities of those countries concerned to end the violations of international law.
In 2 days, Libya will mark the anniversary of the 17th February 2011 revolution. 13 years on, Libyans are still waiting to realize their aspirations for sustainable peace and democracy. Key Libyan institutional stakeholders appear unwilling to resolve the outstanding politically contested issues that would clear the path to the long-awaited elections in Libya. To avoid Libya sliding into disintegration as foreseen through numerous alarming signs, a political agreement is urgently needed among the major stakeholders to form a unified government that will lead the country to elections. Security actors had arbitrarily detained at least 60 individuals, including children, for their actual or perceived political affiliations. These practices cast serious doubt on the willingness of some Libyan actors to support transparent and inclusive political process. Those arbitrarily detained and political prisoners must be released.
The 37th African Union's annual summit will open on Saturday, and this is against the backdrop of several political and security challenges across the continent. The political crisis in Senegal, the security challenges in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and the unrelenting war in Sudan, among others, are expected to dominate discussions among leaders. While many presidents and governments representatives have been arriving in Addis Ababa, the Ethiopian capital, for the two-day meeting. However, Gabon and Niger will be absent from the meeting following their suspension over coups last year. They will join Mali, Guinea, Sudan and Burkina Faso, which are also barred from the summit. Well, set up more than 2 decades ago, the 55-member bloc has long been criticized for being ineffectual and for taking little decisive action in the face of numerous power grabs. Well, there we had the arrival of the Nigerian President Bola Tinubu. Let's discuss the AU summit further. Joining us now is Professor Brooke Hailu. He's an AU and African politics analyst and a former Ethiopian special envoy. Thank you so much, Professor, for your time on Network Africa.
Thank you for having me. I send greetings from the eastern side of Africa to Nigeria.
Thank you so much. Well, yet another AU summit is upon us, with the continent facing numerous challenges, both political and security-wise. What issues would you say, should be prioritized that need urgent addressing at this year's summit?
Thank you for having me once again. The issues are a wide range of topics that are going to be discussed. Some are carryovers from last decades and last years. And this year, the focus will be on education and secondarily on health. But still, prominent of the issues are peace, security, conflict, and stability. These are the issues that are going to be discussed. For example, the Sahel region, as pointed out, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, they have withdrawn from ECOWAS, and also suspended, as far as we know, from the AU. Sudan, the same thing. So that will be a major issue of discussion. Another issue to be discussed will be updates on political transitions on a number of African countries. This is also a major agenda, and that is on here again Sudan, Burkina Faso, and Mali, and also Gabon. In addition, South Sudan will be discussed for its transition, as well as as a result of the conflict in Sudan. How hundreds and thousands of Sudanese are going to the south. So the issue of migration and small arms conflict are going to be discussed. On top of that, Central African Republic is also another item that's going to be discussed. Because in 2019, Central African Republic, the two sides agreed on a political agreement. Now there is the implementation phase is coming. So Central African Republic is also an issue to be discussed. Another issue to be discussed is we call it TVE, terrorism and violent extremism. This is an issue that has accompanied Africa for the last 20 plus years, and that also will be discussed. There is this African Ministerial Committee. There is also this coordination task force that has been created. There is a committee on counterterrorism that has been established by the Peace and Security Council of Africa. And I'll stop by just one additional item, if I may, and that is there is also an election of the Peace and Security Council seats. 10 seats are for grabs, and each region have already forwarded their interest members to be elected. It looks like, say from Central African region, the DRC and Equatorial Guinea are going to make it. From Eastern region, Ethiopia and Eritrea decided to withdraw. So it seems Tanzania and Uganda are going to be re-elected. From northern part of Africa, Algeria, Egypt are going to be elected. That is for foregone conclusion. Mauritania withdrew from this competition. And from southern region, Angola and Botswana are going to replace South Africa and Zimbabwe. So these are, by and large, the major issues that are going to be discussed.
Well, a lot of discussions there from what you have said. The leaders have their work cut out for them at this summit. But let's break it down at this point, the challenges Africa is facing. Let's start with West Africa. I mean, just a while ago, the Senegalese Constitutional Court ruled against President Macky Sall's decision to, delay elections. I want to get your view, what you think on, what his government, would he abide by this court's ruling, and would we see an election hold very quickly in Senegal?
A great question, I would say. Yes, of all countries, Senegal this time around, because Senegal from Western Africa still is taken as a symbol of transition of democracy with a handshake from the time of the father of Senegal, Léopold Sédar Senghor. But now it seems the current president somehow is hesitant, I would say, Macky Sall, to hand over power. It has gone to the Senegalese courts, and the courts have decided but it seems still there is an additional hesitation. On the part of the African Union, believe it or not, when the AU was founded, it was decided that any African government that comes to power should be in a peaceful, just, balanced, professional election, should be elected. And if any government is not elected, any president is not elected by constitutional means, the AU is going to suspend that country. And that was put in effect. I can even go back to, almost to 15 years. Egypt, for instance, 2011, Morsi was removed from power. When that happened, the general who took over Sisi was suspended. Omar al-Bashir of Sudan, he was suspended. So there are countless African states that were suspended. So I think, I expect, according to the book, and nowadays AU is really serious, Senegal is going to be suspended unless and otherwise the president concedes defeat and agrees to the decision of the Constitutional Court of Senegal.
And we've also talking about suspensions. You know, we've seen the suspension of these countries that have had coups, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger. I mean, they would not be attending the summit this year. Including the ECOWAS, the West African body, has also meted out some sanctions to these countries, all Francophone countries, yet the stalemate remains. Do you think the body should use a different approach, especially in the light of the three members pulling out of ECOWAS? And why are these Francophone countries restive, if you will?
A great question. A great question in that, as a matter of procedure, ECOWAS has the duty and the right, to suspend states, member states. So that is, I think, is proper. But as a reaction, I would say a negative reaction, the three countries, namely Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, had withdrawn from ECOWAS. That is really sad. That is really sad. First. Secondly, it seems there is this Anglophone and Francophone kind of division in the western part of Africa. That's also another sad thing that is developing. I wish, and we wish rather, here in Addis, that was not the case. But rules and rules. The three countries are also suspended from African Union, and we feel they should be obliged to respect the decision of ECOWAS as well as the decision of the African Union. That's the only way for Africa to survive. If we want the African Union to survive, there should be a rule of law. There should be procedure. The Charter of the African Union should be respected. Otherwise, if we begin to thumb our nose at the RECs, that's the regional economic communities like, say, ECOWAS or IGAD in East Africa, or let's say SADC in the South, that is a tragedy. So I do hope that Senegal will take it in a good sport, in a good way, and as a model of, shall I say, once again, peaceful transition of democracy, since their independence, Senegalese independence. I do hope and pray that, and also here the gathering also really underline the fact that President Macky Sall should really move on, meaning hand over power.
All right, let's highlight the war in Sudan now. I mean, we've seen a grave impact and thousands of people dead and displaced. Both warring factions, the army and the paramilitary forces head, has said, they've not been able to have a face-to-face discussion despite several numerous mediation efforts. What can the AU do at this meeting that could perhaps bring about a face-to-face between these warring factions?
Exactly. That is another tragedy that has unfolded in our part of the world, that is in the eastern part or the Horn of Africa, since 2019. The Sudanese people rose up with a coalition of the military to topple the 30 years brutal rule of General al-Bashir, as you know. That was really to the delight of everyone. But it didn't take them long. A transitional government was set up with the participation of civic organizations and civilians and trade unions. The military rule under the General al-Burhan, they turned around 360 degrees and assumed power in 2021. And that is where the Sudan finds itself in this predicament. Now, the two military leaders, on the one hand, General Dagalo of the Rapid Deployment Forces, and on the other, General Al-Burhan, they started this war in April. In the next 2 months, it's going to be 1 year, just as a reminder. And the sad reality is that the people are being taken for granted. The rule of law is being thumped up in Sudan. It seems that the Sudanese national interest is not a priority. What is a priority, it seems, is like a typical military government, is the survival and the existence of the military two leaders as well as their supporting groups and their soldiers. So this is the tragedy. And be that may the situation, the African Union and IGAD has taken it upon themselves to bring the two sides together. Ethiopia, for instance, Prime Minister Abiy had taken the initiative and had tried a number of times. And then there is the Jeddah Agreement, Jeddah in Saudi Arabia, where a number of countries, UAE, Saudi Arabia has taken into account, and also the United States and the European Union are on board. But it seems, sad to say, the two sides, rather than put the Sudanese people, the interests of the Sudanese people at the forefront, which they are supposed to do. By the way, both of them are speaking on behalf of the Sudanese people. The tragedy of it, the mockery of everything is that they are not willing to put in front the Sudanese people's interest. So the fighting is still going on, and the efforts of IGAD and the African Union is one agenda. They're going to discuss it tomorrow and on Sudan. And it is hoped that two solutions. One is a bad solution. One would stand alone, meaning win, a clear-cut military winning, which it doesn't seem so. The second option and the most decisive option is that the two groups should listen to their neighbors, to the African Union, to IGAD, to the European Union, to the United Nations Security Council, and stop fighting and seize arms and sign a cessation of hostilities. So that's where, unfortunately, the situation in Sudan is.
That's the hope, a cessation of hostilities, especially for the people who are bearing the brunt of this. But would like to thank you. Many more to discuss, but we're out of time. Professor Brooke Hailu, AUN African politics analyst and a former Ethiopian special envoy. Thank you so much for your insights on the program.
It's a pleasure to have you. Thank you for the invitation.
South Africa's Foreign Minister Naledi Pandor has blasted Israel's spokesperson for accusing her government of representing the interest of Hamas. In response, Ms. Pandor said the insults are a last resort of a scoundrel. Well, Ms. Pandor, who is in the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa, to attend the AU summit, said international community have a responsibility to bring the Israel-Gaza conflict to an end, adding that the world needs to prepare for a two-state solution. Relations between Israel and South Africa have been tense since South Africa filed a case against Israel at the International Court of Justice, accusing Israel of committing genocide in Gaza. However, Israel has denied and rejected the charge. The mayor of the London Borough of Southwark recently met with members of Nigeria's diaspora community in the UK to address the issue of out-of-school children in Nigeria. Collaborating with the IA Foundation, a charity actively involved in Nigeria, the initiative aims to mobilize Nigerians in the UK to support efforts in addressing the crisis, which deprives an estimated 20 million children of their fundamental right to education. Our London correspondent, Teniola Oyetayo, reports.
The issue of out-of-school children remains a significant challenge in Nigeria. It's a crisis the mayor of the London Borough of Southwark, Michael Shitu, says requires urgent and collective action to surmount.
Education allows you as an individual to realize your full potential. No matter how challenging an environment is, and Nigeria has its challenges in itself, we need all hands on deck. You can't have all hands on deck if people do not have the opportunity to be a key member of society, to be a constituent, contributing member of society. So whether you like Nigeria at its current state, or you dream about a Nigeria which is yet to be, the solution lies in education.
Ibironke Adeagbu, CEO of the charity IA Foundation, highlights the costly repercussions of out-of-school children, drawing parallels to insecurity and poverty.
133 million people in Nigeria are living in poverty out of 200 and something million. And that's because if you don't get education, you cannot increase your standard of living. You cannot become economically active. You cannot take care of yourself and your family. So you will live in abject poverty. So if we don't want that poverty to recycle itself, we need to pick those kids up. We need to put them in the classroom. They don't belong on the streets. Because those children of those days that were roaming the streets, nobody paid attention to them. Those children have now grown up. They have no skills. They are not economically active. Therefore, the only thing they can do is to resort to crime. So no prizes for guessing why we have a high level of insecurity in Nigeria today.
Celebrating the 5-year anniversary of the NGO, Nigeria's acting High Commissioner to the UK, Ambassador Cyprian Tessa, acknowledges the progress made so far, stressing the importance of the foundation.
It is incontrovertible that education is the cornerstone of economic growth and national development of any nation. Therefore, we must acknowledge the transformative power of quality education and its pivotal role in shaping the future of our nation. The IA Foundation has been remarkable in addressing this vital issue through the provision of education to less privileged children in slums and underserved communities across Nigeria. IA Foundation, your efforts to tackle barriers to education is indeed applauded and acknowledged.
Nigerian donors in attendance urge others in the UK diaspora community to also strive to make a difference.
We in diaspora, anything, no amount of money you have or contribute is too small. It's important. We know what the exchange rate is talking about now. We know what it is. And it goes a long way in Nigeria. So, let's not say it's the government's responsibility alone. We as individuals, as organizations, we can do something as well. We can partner with government, we can do something on our own, but the end goal is to get these kids off the streets into education. It is very important.
When you consider the amount that they need back home, it's something that you can afford. A dinner out for one family one night will probably pay a school fees of someone for a term, if not a year. I don't know how any other way to put it, but to say to people, think about it. Think about putting a smile on somebody's face.
Over the past 5 years, the foundation has assisted over 100 children by taking them off the streets and covering their school fees and other necessities. With increased funding, they aim to reach more children.
We've picked up about 105 now. The statistics is 20.2 million. So 105 is a drop in the ocean. So as we said today at the presentation, we want to be able to pick up 1,000 children every year. And we want to work collaboratively with the government, because at the end of the day, it's the government's responsibility to educate its citizens. But government can't do it alone. So we are here to support the government to make sure we can dent that 20.2 million. It's embarrassing. It's just not acceptable.
In a bid to tackle the crisis, IA Foundation officials also plan to meet UK lawmakers in March to lobby for more international intervention. From London, Teniola Oyetayo.
And that's it on the program today and for the week. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Olarinde. Have a lovely weekend.